So my name is Chartrand. I'm I guess I'm the other half of the speaker this evening, this afternoon. And it's been quite a journey to get here. We have the Sircle Occupational Therapy Pain and Wellness Clinic here in Cottonwood Lane. And our journey started with me in New Zealand and Max here in America. We were each following our separate lines of study, and then we came together and we just continue to evolve. We've established the DigiCare Research Foundation, and we're bringing to light hidden research. And we introduce healing modalities that you won't find in mainstream medicine. And we really promote self-care among consumers. Our work is worldwide, and we need all of us really to come together to accomplish the transformation of healthcare everywhere. I have witnessed so many rewarding events where people who've come through our doors have this sense of hopelessness, feeling like they've got nowhere to turn. They've been told that they're at the level where nothing more can be done for them. And when they arrive and enter up, they're first of all assessed and they enter the program, and we get some quite remarkable results. And I think we might even have some people sitting in the audience today who might testify to that. Dr. Stanley Chartrand is a widely published professor of behavioural medicine and translational medical researcher. He serves on the International Council for Functional and Environmental Medicine, and Environmental Medicine. His first doctorate is in communicative disorders, and his second doctorate is in behavioural medicine. Now, people get sometimes a little mixed up with that. They think behavioural medicine might be behavioural health, which is quite different. Behavioural health is more in the psychiatry area. Behavioural medicine is how the body behaves. How does it behave to medications? How does it behave to food? How does it behave to anything? How does it behave when we touch something? You know, and it fits in very closely with occupational therapy. So it's been a great doctorate for him to have achieved. In 1994, he was the recipient of the International Joel S. Warnick Excellence in Education Award, and in 2017 was awarded the highest credentials from the National Speakers Association. There's only about 800 worldwide of certified speaking professionals, and so it's quite something that you actually have a deaf person who can speak to an audience and has been able to achieve that eminent award, the Certified Speaking Professional Award. He actually has been severely hearing impaired since about 2.5, when he got a severe case of double mumps that was untreated in those days. And then by the time he was about 12, he would have been considered getting progressively more impaired, until by 19 he was profoundly deaf. Just a little sidebar, a lot of that deafness was because of a certain antibiotic that he was prescribed, which is still prescribed today in very serious cases. So he was actually went down with rheumatic fever when he was around that age. So anyway, several years ago, that's as much as he could hear. Nothing. Completely deaf, stone deaf, deaf as a post. And he was one of the pioneers in getting a cochlear implant. And so that's been an amazing thing. Even though it's an old implant, it still provides him with a certain amount of ability to speak clearly. But the big thing is that, and this is what we're talking about tonight, is the power of music. He came from a very musical family who asked him which instrument he'd like to play when he was around 12 years old. And he might tell you that story in tonight's event, but it's been music that's allowed him to speak as well as he has. Otherwise, he would have the deaf talk, you know, sort of monotone. But what's really important to know is he hasn't heard a human voice for about 30 years or more. He's not heard a human voice. He's never heard my voice. Isn't that a big pity? Anyway, so he's a lifelong musician, performing with symphony orchestras and jazz band, making a number of professional recordings along the way. Tonight he will favour us with several musical numbers on the clarinet and tenor saxophone, demonstrating how playing a musical instrument develops one past the limitations otherwise thrown at us in life. We also have the brand new book, a really good book, titled The Power of Music for Lifelong Human Development, which we hope you will get tonight when you leave. It's at a special introductory price of $15, I believe. $15 for the book. How much?
The new one.
The new one. 20? 20. The others were 50. The others are 15, but this one's 20. Okay, so without any, and we need to introduce Biel, who is accompanying Max on the bongo drums. How do you say your name? I'm sorry. Abiel. He was a great member of some of you might remember the Casa Grande Jazz Express. And that's how we came to know him. And it's just wonderful that he could be here tonight with us. So without any further ado, let me introduce Dr. Max Stanley Chartrand.
be in the same room. Can you hear me throughout the room? Can you hear me back there? Okay. I'll do my best. I have no idea how loud I am. So when I'm getting a sound test, I say...
Go louder.
Yeah. I say...
It's not on.
Yes, it is. It is.
I don't think you turned it on.
No, it's on. Put the volume on.
It's on. It's all over here. So we need to figure out why it's not.
It's on.
Say it. Test it.
Testing 1, 2, testing. Okay. I don't know what we did different. Her touch. Okay. I'll do my best. I have a habit of not covering my lips because I think everybody lip reads. That was my lifeline. Without that, I have no hearing at all. And I tell you that because I've worked with the deaf for many, many years. I've lectured many and been a guest speaker for many conventions of the deaf. And wherever I go, the young people, after I get through speaking, of course, they clap like this. They don't make a sound. They just go like this. And then they come up afterwards and say, how can we speak like you do? And I tell every group I speak to, I'm the deafest person in the room. How do I know that? Because I have no hearing. After they take my hearing test, you can use that audiogram on somebody else because there's not a mark on it. 0. So when we talk about the deaf population, I'm the deafest of the deaf. And I don't say that to have you feel sorry for me, but to tell you that what I'm going to show you today, when we go into what's happening in the United States, very unique, because I know some of you are from Canada, and you might smugly say, well, we don't have that problem up there, but you're starting to have it, aren't you? They're starting to quack and look just like the ducks over here. So today in a population of 370 million people in the United States, plus about 20 million illegals. 390, rounded off to 400,000, 400 million. Here we go. These figures are understatements, so I need you to know how bad it is. Today, 16.2 million of our children and adults have ADHD. Now, we see the numbers much higher. I mentioned to you about 50% of our children in school today have learning disabilities. And it's because of all the vaccines they've had. 82, I mean, who's had 82 in this room? Nobody, see. And we have problems, even with just what we've been through in life. But these poor kids, 16.2 million with ADHD, and that's adults too. 55.5 million children and adults with dyslexia. That shocked me. I had no idea. That's an area I had not really delved into that much. And then we get to 7.8 million in autism spectrum, which is probably, these are the ones that are getting some kind of assistance. So I know that number is about triple or quadruple what we see right here. Probably close to 30 million Americans with autism of some sort. But they go out and they all outgrow. And part of the reason they outgrow is because some of the things I'm going to be talking about. Yes?
We're stopping this meeting because I was just touched inappropriately. Thank you.
What's that?
You were being rude because you're
What's going on?
Someone grabbing me is rude. And every one of you would feel the exact same way.
I don't hear what she's saying. I'm deaf, so everybody heard me.
Somebody touched her.
What's happening? What's that? Told her to be quiet.
She was being loud, and someone asked her to be quiet.
Okay. Anyway, the prevalence of Alzheimer's and all dementias. Now, you need to know this because this comes back to home to us in this age group. Okay? My next birthday will be 78. I want to mention that to you so you know that I'm one of you. And I'm going through the same thing. I'm competing with doctoral people who are 24 years old. And they're walking around like encyclopedias. So it's a job, isn't it? Because a lot of you are very accomplished in the fields that you come from. So prevalence of Alzheimer's and all dementias in the United States, 75 years and older, 13.2% of everyone 75 and up have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or with a disorder of dementia. That doesn't include a whole swath of people that have never been diagnosed, which are many. Then we get into 85 and up is 35%. 90 years and up, 42.7%. That's a lot of people. And all of the above categories of cognitive deficiencies are increasing every year. So that we ought to be concerned about that from a community standpoint, because we are a community of people, in Americans and Canadians, and what other countries do we have represented? Any other countries? Okay. When I speak internationally, they come from everywhere. It's unbelievable. But I know that your ancestors came from many places. All forms of cognitive and developmental decline are growing faster each year in all age groups. So this is not something that just popped up out of nowhere. It's getting worse every year. Now, a new book that I have, and I'm not here to sell books. I don't know if you mentioned, because I could not hear, but we have a nonprofit research foundation that does the printing, and I make nothing from it whatsoever. She'll be the first to tell you, because she handles the accounting for the foundation. So I have no financial interest, but I want you to know. Let me ask you real quick. How many of you played a musical instrument during your lifetime? Okay. What did you play back here?
Saxophone.
What's that? Sax? Come on up here and play. She knows she can't do that. She doesn't have a reed. Can't use mine. Okay. I saw some of the hands go up. What'd you play, Peggy? Piano? Oh, man. Piano is one of the genius instruments. Who else played piano? Okay, that's the geniuses. When I have someone complain that Mom made me take piano lessons for 4 years, what they don't realize is what Kodali taught. It's called the Kodali method. 4 years raises IQ on the piano 30 points. So if the average IQ of a person is 100, which is rounded off to 100, 130 puts you one IQ over the line for genius. Go back and give your mother a big hug. Next time you visit, if she's still alive, if she's not alive, tell her, give her a big hug anyway. I keep telling my mother, you'll see me before you know it. So, what we're finding is that if that helped us as young people, what happens when we get older? We're going to talk about that. So, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. Born in 1948, severely hearing impaired at 2.5 years old, and then later profound. By late teens, lost advanced to profound deafness. And Meniere's, you know what Meniere's is? It means I'm lucky to be standing up here because we don't have any balance. I've had zero balance for a long, long time. My eyes are open, I can stand and look normal. Close my eyes and everything changes. That's the reason when I was playing Over the Rainbow, I had to open my eyes to get my balance back. Otherwise you hear a loud crash, boom, and it wasn't in the music. So I was a professional player at age 14. Now, there's a long story behind that story, and you'll read that last section of the book talks about my life story and how everything was accidental. I mean, when I was 6 years old, I was the mascot for the football team. He said, Max, would you want to be the mascot? I didn't know what that was, and I didn't know what they were asking me, but I said yes. And I went out in the field, and they said at halftime, you're supposed to go out to entertain so the players can rest. And you go out there and run around in the field in a bear suit. That was something. The problem is they couldn't get me off the field. I thought everybody was cheering me on. They said, no, we're trying to get you off the field so we start the game. Okay. So I earned 6 advanced degrees without hearing my professors. Boy, I can't tell you when the professor said, what are you doing in my class if you can't hear my lectures? I said, well, you won't give me credit for not here, will you? So I had to learn my material. I had to know it as well as my professors did. I've got a lot of stories on that one. Okay, deaf adult, 80 to 90 IQ. That's what I should have had. If I never played musical instruments, someone forgot to tell me I couldn't play, so I played. And it raised my IQ from the average of 80 to 90, which is where you typically are. And I don't mean that derogatory. If I have a deaf person hear that, they, oh, but it's the truth. Put a point in that deaf person's hands, have them sit down at the piano and take lessons, have them sing in the choir, all of a sudden they bond with each other. They reach over and they bond with the nearest person. They blend, and they learn, and you say, well, how do they do that without hearing? I'm the last guy on earth to tell you how, because I don't know how. Every note I played for you a while ago sounds the same to me. Did it sound the same to you? No. I played a lot of notes in a big range, right? Okay, I hope it sounded like that. Otherwise, it was beep, 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 all the way through for me. Okay, what are you trying to tell me? It says, what's that?
I'm thinking, this
There's no whispering to me. She has to tell everybody what she's saying before she gets to me. It says,
I'm wondering if Mrs. Perry might sit in a better place. Can you hear okay? I don't know. His name's back to you.
okay, we care about every person. Every person's important. She's important. What a sweet woman. You're important. And everybody in here is important to me. I tell you this. Everybody has talent. Everybody has knowledge. Everybody has something they've accomplished. When they go out and they touch someone else and serve somebody else, they've done something great. And we're all here for that very purpose. That's why we're here. We're not here to receive as much as to give. And hopefully we'll accept also when someone hands that over to us. But on my teeth, on the IQ, they measured me when I was 17 years old. I didn't know they were measuring me. They said I was 129. Hey, I thought, maybe I'm not so dumb after all. And then when I was 42 years old as an adult, when I was entering my second doctoral program, I was doing 2 bachelors and 2 masters, and I was earning a second doctorate. Actually, it was right before that. It was 154. And it went on. And so I know that as we get older, we can get better. We don't have to settle. I was blessed with a wonderful wife, 8 children, 23 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren. And so I know no strangers. When you have that many kids, you know no strangers, right? Everybody's your kid. I felt the hand and blessing of the Lord in every step of my life. The closing song I'm going to give you today on the clarinet will pay tribute to him. A little known truth about getting older. We need to know this so we don't worry. The last thing we need to do is worry because we start forgetting things. I like to liken it like this, and that is that we have lots of stuff going in that filing cabinet. That filing cabinet is so full of papers are falling out of it, and we think of something that we've talked about a million times, but we can't remember that one word. It might be the word pancreas. That happened to me when I was at 8,000 feet lecturing at a state convention, and there was some fancy ski resort, and I wasn't used to being at 8,000 feet speaking. And I couldn't remember the word pancreas, and that's what I was talking about. Whoa! It's a shift from left hemisphere to right hemisphere in our brain, central executive. It means we are designed to become better and wiser as we age. So if you thought you were a good parent, you're wiping everything out, you're breaking all the records as grandparents. And if you live to be great-great-grandparents, whoa, watch out, world. So it means we're designed to become better and wiser as we age. And today, this little factoid has been lost in the mistaken race for profits in the medical field. In other words, when you, let's say, the most common test for dementia is a screening test that was never meant for anybody but people with perfect hearing. How many of you have perfect hearing? Come on. Perfect hearing. Let's test you at 8,000 hertz and see what you can hear.
They tell me I hear things
Okay.
I shouldn't.
You need to know, so I opened it when I worked on my second doctorate in behavioral medicine and realized that they were giving a test to the group that has very little hearing, especially the men. 2.8 times as many men with hearing loss as women. And so when you do sitting in a hot seat getting the hearing test, it's the male. And he says, I hear all right, in his John Wayne imitation. And she says, no, you don't. So they're going to give you a test. It's calibrated to be 3 feet away at 65 decibels output. Well, I mean, no one's paying attention to that. They do it across the table, 6 or 7 feet away. It may be 50 decibels, only a normal hearing person can understand them, and they ask you questions, and they check you off this. You missed that, you missed this, you missed this. You see what happens? Overdiagnosis. I did a lecture in 1999 when I was working with the University of Pennsylvania, a UPenn study, and we found that 92% of the people with hearing loss over 65 years old had, they said, Alzheimer's. It was unbelievable. I said, no, because I've got this hearing loss. And so there was a poster made that had my picture, and it says, no mental health assessment of an older adult is valid until they've been tested for their hearing and have it corrected. Then they can test you for your cognitive function, not before. And that never happens. I'm a research chair. Research chairs get invited to participate in lots of studies. I get invitations several times a week from all over the world. One of those studies was in France. It was going to be the largest study in Alzheimer's. in history, the largest. It was going to be 300,000 seniors were going to be analyzed in the study, and they asked me to be part of that. I said, well, how far along are you? They said, well, we've already done everything now. We're just doing the analysis of the figures. I said, wait a minute, let's back up. How many of these people did you test the hearing of, the hearing loss, to find out and correct that hearing loss before you tested them for cognitive function? Well, they said, well, none. I said, no audiologists at all? None? They said, none. I said, that test, the study's not valid. We've got to back up and hire an army of audiologists, 300,000 seniors. We can't do that. Of course, I was just invited in the same day when I brought up the fact that their data was going to be, but that's the kind of thing. So I need to let you know, the reason I'm talking about on this particular slide is a little known truth about getting older. It's called normal aging factors. You remember that. And if you have a hearing loss, believe me, you will look and quack and walk just like the duck that has Alzheimer's until you get it corrected. So don't let them pull that on you. One reason we don't want them to pull that on us is because you are declared and unable to understand, that's one thing. But when you're unable to actually function mentally, that makes you a non-person. That takes away your right to vote. Nobody enforces that. They don't enforce that to you. And you don't have to be an American to vote. Anybody can vote now. I don't know. But what happens is it takes away your ability to have control over your income, over your bank accounts, the ownership. It can be taken away simply by declaring you incompetent mentally. You become a non-person as far as citizenship goes and the rights of that. So I'm here to tell you, defend yourself if you ever have that happen. Sometimes it's less than hurting a family member. Sometimes it's life itself. Normal aging factors. Introducing the left brain to the right brain. I have colleagues out there in the field, and I'd like to say we have two brains. I don't care if they say we have only one brain or two halves. I say we've got two brains. One brain rules us during the day. That's our left hemisphere. It has vocabulary. It has a little calculator. It can add and subtract and divide. If they're really smart, they can do calculus in that side of the brain. The other side of the brain can't do any calculation at all. But thank goodness, when you're driving down a long, dreary road without much to see, it notices those beautiful mountains way off in the distance. It notices the beauty of the song that's being played at the time. If it's like me, it hears a song and imagines it. I guess that makes me hallucinatory when I pull them up and I play songs all day long because I've never heard songs on radio. I don't even hear songs that I made on my records and cassettes over the years. And CDs, you see, I'm talking about cassettes. They stopped making those when in 1978. They all lost their magnetism, so I have nothing to show you today. But the left brain is the one that's with you during the day. So let's talk about that. The right hemisphere is utilized for aesthetics, art and music, emotion, expresses, it sees the whole. And then the left hemisphere is used for math, deduction, abstract thought. It sees only small parts of the whole, which means the left brain, as smart as it is, and it can calculate, it can figure a lot of things out. It watches the speed limit, it looks at your speedometer, it looks at the signs, and it match. Okay, I'm okay. The right brain can care less. The right brain is got a knapsack over his shoulder, hiking down the road, not even caring about where the next meal is coming from. But he takes over at night. And if you mistreat him during the day, he kicks you all night long. That's when we get nightmares. You see, we've got to be true to ourselves because it comes back. And the right brain is very honest. It's painfully honest. He doesn't know anything but honesty. But it sees beauty in everything, thank goodness. So it's not exactly Steven Spielberg's perspective. So let's say you're driving down the road and you're driving down the highway, and the left brain is watching the speed. It's making sure that you're in your lane. Even if it's got the guidance, I have guidance on my pickup that keeps me in the lane. Even if I don't, I could let go of the steering wheel. I could drive on down the road. Does anybody have that? Okay, that's important for it. It's not guys, isn't it? Thank goodness for that. So, but the left brain can't help itself. It's still keeping us in lane. It's still keeping the speed. It's watching everything that's going on. But he doesn't look very far ahead because it's so lost in the woods. It just sees what's up close. And the left brain, or right brain, on the other hand, sees everything. It sees the pretty lights that are flashing up there. And it sees long lines of cars. And it sees that the traffic's not moving. But it doesn't see a peak to the left hemisphere, so the left hemisphere is barreling down the road and slams on his brakes and says to the right hemisphere, why didn't you tell me that they have a roadblock up here? And the right brain says, well, I thought it was just pretty lights. Well, what about all the cars? The right brain says, I thought they were there for a rock concert. You see, there were two hemispheres, and they battle each other. Now, there's a little area about the size of this little finger called the corpus callosum, and that is where we need to be concerned for our young people, because the difference between, let's say, all babies are autistic. Whenever I give lectures on cognition, and I'm speaking to university professors with PhDs, heads of departments, and medical school, whoever they are, I talk about the fact that everybody's born autistic. When the baby cries, does he know that he's disturbing your peace? When the baby cries, they know they're hungry, but do they know or care, even consider that that's a possibility? You're starving too? Or the mother just went through a horrible ordeal of pain, bring you into the world. And so the baby doesn't know that. But it has a lot of training wheels in its first years of life. It's got all these little things, and I'll tell you about them in the book, that people don't even realize. Why does the baby look at you when you handle that doorknob? You're about to go in the room, and he goes like that. And you say, oh, look at him. He's so smart. Because he knew I was coming in the room. No. It's called the moral reflex. It's training wheels of attention. But the poor soul, it goes and it gets vaccinated. This happened to my oldest boy, who's in his 50s today. When he got the vaccination, MMR, came home like this. No more moral reflex. No more reflex for food. Everything changed. Everything changed. That was the beginning. That was stopping him from developing outside of that autistic state. Now, he was born to a father who danced with his kids and sang to them and played for them and sat down at the piano. And I say, go to bed, kids. They say, would you play a song, Dad? And I'd play songs, and I would play them a little concert and sing every night. And if that wasn't enough, they'd say, would you come and tell us a story? And I'd tell them the wildest stories from the right brain you ever saw. They would fall asleep and dream everything I told them. Now, see, that's the way the brain works. And when we realize it, then we realize that the kids need something we're not giving them. Now, Dennis and I attended, this is 2015, we attended a worldwide medical convention, actually it was a symposium on dementia. And we presented this model. This was my presentation at that. Dennis is steeped in psychiatric occupational therapist. She's from New Zealand, and published on this, she's invented and created the Sircle program. She added my work to it about 26 years ago or so. 27 years ago, we added our program together, put our programs together. And this was the model that we came up with. At the top is hearing loss. That was major. Untreated infections is huge. I can't believe how many people are taking NSAIDs and steroids. If you have an infection, the last thing you want to be taking is steroids, except for maybe a tiny little amount, just so the spontaneous remission can be reestablished. But typically in American medicine, you are given steroids for infection. You're given NSAIDs, which will ruin your heart and ruin your vascular and give you neuropathy. But those are the medications when they talk about arthritis, which is caused almost exclusively from infections that are not being taken care of, whether it be from the teeth or the ear, and septic keratosis, obturans, there's many different forms. Kidney failure, all those lead back to infection. It doesn't matter if it's parasites, and I need to settle that right now. If a person in this room has parasites, nobody walking this earth doesn't have parasites. It's just how much they have and how it's affecting them. But I'm telling you this because untreated infections are a major cause. We have a study that came out on a certain drug back in the days when they used to be independent. And they found from this Alzheimer's, long before the Benda and the Aricept and the other terrible, horrible, toxic drugs came out, It was a type of drug that would bring down the inflammation of the astroglia. If you know what that is, that's the floating myelin that protects the neurons of the brain. And this particular drug would cost $8,000 a dose, $8,000 a day. And back in those days, before the ACE was created, we had actuaries that said that's not cost effective. We had people like myself, translational medical researchers like myself, that said, yes, it works, but it's temporary. It doesn't do anything permanent. $8,000 a day, so it was bounced out and never brought out. But the thing we learned on the way to that study was is that if you reduce the inflammation from infection, your memory comes back. And you look in the mirror and know who you are. And you know the person that walked in and you say, oh, that's my wife or my husband. That comes back. That was the most revealing thing we've ever seen. We were shocked. Instantly, within minutes, the person knew who they were. So that was a biggie. We put that right up there on the left-hand side. On the right side, we put toxicities, medications, and that has grown exponentially. From 2015 to today, the number of medications the average American taking is 2.5 times what it was in 2015, which means we have lots and lots of, we're losing our cognition as a result of taking that. And if you go down the list, food additives and environmental toxins on top of that. We come down to unhealed injuries. That's a biggie. Lots of those create degeneration. Anytime you're looked at by your doctor or your nurse practitioner, whoever is helping you, make sure you ask the question, what's causing it? And never accept we don't know. Never accept it's idiopathic, which means only idiots will know. No. Never accept it. You want a health professional that's going to search and find what's causing your problem and address that, not cover it up with symptoms and everybody needs to take this and this and this and this. Because I'm here to tell you that we have so much dementia among us today because we're taking too many medications. Even one medication can be too many. For instance, blood pressure medication. Now, I'll tell you from a research standpoint, because I've been involved in a number of these studies, as either a chair or a committee member, that anything that will bring down your blood pressure will also bring your blood volume down. When it brings down your blood volume, it makes your kidneys hold sodium, so your blood volume doesn't drop so low that when you pump blood to the heart, you don't have your blood there. See, that's what happens when blood volume goes too low. You think you're in the Sahara Desert. And so what it does, walking around 3 days at a time without getting a sip of water, and so it makes your kidneys hold sodium. What does holding sodium in the kidneys do? It makes the kidneys fail. So when you correct the blood pressure with blood pressure medicine, you're going to lose your kidneys much earlier, and your life is going to be cut shorter. I'm not saying don't take it at all, so please don't stop taking something just because I said, like statin drugs. That's the only thing I say, stop that, because your body will have a party tonight if you stop taking it. Because it causes you to have dementia and some terrible, really severe problems. There's no rebound on statin drugs, but on the blood pressure medicine, very bad ones. And some of those bad ones will change your ability to make and secrete hormones. You guys, one reason that my wife went to tell you a little bit about my background, I didn't know what she said. It's so you know when I say these things, I'm not just a wild guy with some crazy ideas. I'm on the research side. Research is 20 to 30 years ahead of practice today. I remember an editor of one of the medical journals that I was a peer reviewer for about 20 years ago said that research is about 12 years ahead of medicine in practice. But today it's about 30 years. I feel like I've gone to a different planet and come back and everybody thinks they can actually take care of the blood pressure problem simply by taking pills for it. And those pills are what cause dementia because it takes anything below your blood pressure, make sure that your microvascular system fails and you don't get blood to the head. You get hearing loss faster. And lots of other problems develop, heart problems and so forth. Chronic dehydration, micronutrient deficiencies. So remember that model. Vanessa Mankato, I just have a minute to bring this up. I was a scientific advisor with the nuns of Mankato, wonderful group. And they called me up in late 1992, as I recall. And I said, who are you guys? Because I'm deaf and I did not have TDD like I have now. I have a software that puts captioning on the screen. So my assistant put it on speakerphone and she mouthed the words as they spoke and asked them who they were. They said, we're your groupies. And I said, who are you? And one lady was Rose. That was her in the front. And then the other ladies, I forgot her name. And there were nuns. And they said, we stand on street corners and we hand out copies of your articles. And we tell everyone, get your hearing fixed. We tell everyone to eat organic. We tell everyone to stop taking so much medication to get to the root cause. I could not believe it. They were so smart. They had me come and speak. Anyway, that was a major groundbreaking study, and I'm ashamed to say that our medical field did not even say a peep about it. This is the cover. This picture I had grabbed. This picture, I'm sorry, it's not a good representation, but I had to take a picture of Life magazine, which doesn't exist today, but back then they had an article, and that was the only publication I could find it in. It was a major study. It cost millions of dollars to put on. It was involved several medical schools at once. The University of Kentucky, University of Minnesota, who I had a lot to do with their program. I helped them set up their cochlear implant program. They didn't have much to do with the Kentucky group. But they went in and they found that these sisters had the worst cases of dementia they'd ever seen physiologically, which means they had lots of tau and plaques and so forth. But they had no sign in their behavior. They had memories like tact. They could work crossword puzzles and pen. They were smart. They played music every day. They sang. They read crossword puzzles. You name it. Just wonderful group. And very smart and lived past the average age was over 100 years old. This Rose right in the front is 102, and she passed away about 3 months after this photo was taken. I spoke when this photo was taken in Minnesota, the dead of winter in January, with 8 feet of snow plowed up on each side of the road, thinking nobody was going to show up. And I walked in the middle of their meeting, and they had hundreds of people there. I was shocked. I was late because I was trying to find my car in the parking lot. But wonderful people. Oliver Sacks, who was laughed at by all the researchers at that time, said that the brain can regrow those circuits. So when Sister Rose was the first one to die in that group that had an analysis, they did a cross-section, they looked at everything, and they found that it was the worst case of dementia we ever saw. But she was sharp as a tack. You would never know by her behavior. And they looked under high-powered atomic microscopes, and they looked closer, and they found out she rewired everything. That's what happens. If you go back, how many played a musical instrument? Pull that musical instrument out again and start playing again. You will grow, especially if someone says you got dementia. By golly, I'm going to do what Dr. Chartrand did. Hey, if I had not played music. Did it sound okay?
Yeah.
Am I deluding myself that it didn't sound good?
No, it sounded good.
Is it okay? Okay. Have you ever heard a deaf person play? There's one other person in the world that actually is deaf as I am that plays today. She lost her hearing at age 12, which means she was postlingual. I was prelingual when I lost mine, which means I shouldn't be able to play. The cochlear implant doesn't really, for instance, if I had not done that before the cochlear implant came out, I wouldn't be able to do it now because I can't hear the difference in notes. It all sounds the same to me. I was one of the ones when I was implanted 35 years ago, and they said your hearing is too bad for a cochlear implant. We can't bring it up enough. Do it anyway. The same thing when I was more hearing aids as a young boy. My mother, we went to the audiologist. She said, he's too deaf, enrolled him in deaf school. She said, no, I'm going to have him wear hearing aids. She said, we can't hear anything. That's what I want. And they put me in the front row. I've got wonderful stories to tell you in my book about what happened in the front row. I wasn't always the teacher's favorite student. Okay, healthy brain versus severe Alzheimer's. The flawed theoretical models that prevented many seniors from recovering lost cognition. They use the beta amyloid plaque. So please, if you go in and they do a study, a PET scan on you, and they find these plaques in there, that is not dementia, first of all. And your brain is probably rewired a lot, and they're probably not equipped to see those new connections. What I'm saying is never, ever, ever take the dementia drugs, period. There's not a one of this good. The dementia drugs like Aricept, Namenda, and there's another one that just Exelon that just came out. And what you do is what they say is that they say the beta amyloid is what's causing it. I'm saying no, it's not. It's not. Let me tell you what my doctoral students, which were PhDs, and many of them were department heads of major universities. I've had, when I was involved in teaching the doctoral level people, many of them were accomplished adults who were already heads of departments in some universities that were going back to get a research degree. We had a number of MDs do the same thing, a good number of MDs. So I put it to them. I said, we didn't have AI then. I had them go back to the literature and analyze. This was their assignment, and research, so they could do deep research that was not being done anywhere, and find out every study that shows that beta amyloid plaques causes you to have dementia. They came back and they said, no, these guys were just in the bank when it was robbed, but they were not the bank robbers. But that was the excuse they used to come up with those medications. And not a single one of those medications ever supplemented into those did anything to give a person back their memory. As a matter of fact, we estimated they were by a factor of 2 to 3 times increasing the rate of your decline, so that the average person after taking it who did have dementia usually passed away within about a year to 12 to 24 months after taking it, because they scrubbed those plaques off. So what they found, and this is the answers from my doctoral students, they said beta amyloid plaques are not harmful, but are simply end-stage signs of other health problems, such as chronic subclinical infection and toxic medication. In other words, they traced it back to infections that were being ignored. I can't tell you how many people I see have infections that no one's paying a bit of attention to. You think about that. If you got this, what is this? What's a good word for it? Rheumatoid, right? Rheumatoid arthritis. Where does it come from? It comes from C4 being attacked from the teeth or head and neck infection, going down to a reflex arc to T1, thoracic 1, down to the hand, and it makes it go like this. The last thing you want to be taking is a painkiller, an opioid, and a steroid, and NSAID. You want something to kill the infection, right? But just simply taking an antibiotic won't do it. First of all, they don't know what they're killing because it's hidden. The reason it's hidden is because septic infections cannot be in the blood. If they are, you're no more. You won't live for 24 hours. If you have a tooth pulled and it's abscessed, your dentist has nightmares about you dying that very night because he pulled the tooth without giving you an antibiotic before with an abscessed tooth, right? Do I have any dentists in the room? But you know what I'm talking about. Maybe you've known somebody that's passed away from having a tooth pulled. One drop of that substance in the blood and you're dead in 24 hours. Your heart will not take it. So I'm here to tell you that that's the place you go. I'm telling you for your own good, so that when you protect yourself, be wise. Do not trust the system. The system today has no liability anymore. Most of the people in the medical field today do not pay the $500,000, $150,000 for their insurance premium because they couldn't afford it. So they joined into groups. And so we've lost Dr. Marcus Welby. I know he's a TV character, but everybody wants Dr. Welby. Dr. Welby was independent. He was what we call a researcher practitioner. And he didn't take no financial, did he? He was on the phone. You said, don't come over. He says, I'll be there in 15 minutes. And he was there, wasn't he? Everybody went south. Okay, here we go. Simultaneous solution for living a long life with memory not only intact, but better than ever. So let's take this a piece at a time. Refrain from microwaving. No more microwaving food. Don't warm your food up in the microwave. How many of you knew that already? Because so many have been to our clinic. Okay, so some of you knew that. No more microwaving. Not even to warm your food. You'll be in a class all by yourself. No more microwaving. You say, what do I do with that thing in my RV? Put your paper plates and cups in. That's what we do. Don't microwave. What comes out live in a microwave? The only thing comes out live out of a microwave after just a couple of seconds, single-cell animals. Food poisoning, E. coli, salmonella, something that does not have a nucleus because the wavelength of a microwave is smaller than the smallest nucleus of a complex organism, like something you eat. Microwaving, no. And when you say, why didn't I know that? I'm an astute person. I read books, I read articles, everything. Because in 1989, there was a gag order from the National Institutes of Health that no more research, and we couldn't even talk about the research that's been published showing that cancer was skyrocketing, diabetes was skyrocketing, arthritis was skyrocketing, heart disease was skyrocketing. You were not allowed to know. And I talk about that in my book. In fact, I mentioned it in the book on essential oils as well, because the Creator gave us that medicine. If you want to look to see what models the researchers on the pharmaceutical side are using to come up with the idea to use a certain kind of drug, they find a way to make a synthetic, which has the opposite spin. It's a mirror image, opposite spin, in its nucleus from the natural, which means that anything that's natural, other than the synthetic, has a natural component. And we have entire books, unbelievable amount of research, buried deep. When I wrote the first edition of that particular book on the essential oils, I had a stack of research this tall. I printed it all out because I had to get it from archives of things you could not find by Googling, because Googling is controlled by Big Pharma. They're taking all those off. In fact, for years I've written college courses and university courses only to find that within I would use the references to different studies, and those studies had disappeared, and my curriculum had to be turned upside down and start all over, simply because they were hiding information from the people. That's when my wife and I decided we were going to put everything we had into the research foundation so that we could uncover that information that we knew was not available to you. Restore your lost height. You've got to go somewhere that restores lost height. So far, Sircle is the only one that claims to do that. And we claim to do that because everybody comes to us gets taller. Don't they, Rick? They get taller. And people don't, they say, well, why do I want to get taller? Why do I want to gain back my height? Does anybody know? What happens when we shrink? Now, when we shrink, we pinch the nerve roots, don't we? We get partial information to our internal organs. Our brain doesn't get enough information disseminated. We have a hypothalamus at the base of the brain that goes to every single cell in the body. There's nothing that happens in the body that the hypothalamus does not detect, as long as it's got a nerve and a blood vessel, and it's able to go and detect something. Otherwise, when it doesn't have that, we call it neuropathy. So remember that. Someone says you have neuropathy, that means you're not getting enough blood to the legs. We increase that, and all of a sudden, hypothalamus reaches over the pituitary gland and says, would you send a cascade of anti-inflammatory cytokines down this area so the blood can reach it? Because otherwise, it thinks it's been bit by a snake out in the middle of the desert. And that reduces another atom, if any of you in the health professions, is called perfusion index, how far your blood goes. And those are the things that make us age. So you need to restore lost height, range of motion, eliminate toxins, inflammation, parasites, biofilm infections via the Sircle method. And so that's the reason we have these sheets here. If you want to have a biomarker assessment, you just hand that to Glennis. This is the peak of our season, and we really we would scramble. We work long hours trying to take care of everybody, because we know many of you are here just for a short time. But we don't charge for the biomarker assessment, and you'll find that it opens up more information on you than you've ever known. And it doesn't cost you anything. We don't plan, I have no plans and interest in that, but I want you to find out what's wrong with your body. Doing so, we hope, one, to overcome hypertension, elevated blood sugar, crippling inflammation, and biofilm infections, which will in effect reduce your need for synthetic medications. Is the best way to do it. So anything you do with medications, do it intelligently. And make sure you have professional guidance. You also correct any loss of hearing, correcting the loss of hearing as thoroughly as possible. There's a lot of misinformation about hearing aids today. People say, well, red light therapy brings back hearing. I said, show me the audiogram before and show it to me afterwards. I have contacted everybody that's been brought to my attention because I received my first doctorate in communicative disorders. So I've taught the audiologists, the ENTs, and the hearing aid specialists for years. And they consider me an expert. So they'll send the technology and say, would this make my patients hear? So I contact the company. They can't send me a single audiogram showing that before and after improves. But they have lots of testimonies saying their hearing improved. But how do you know? If you can't duplicate it with finite and concrete information, objective information that can be found with the hearing test. I say the jury's still out. I'm not saying they don't work. I'm just saying there's no proof. And so that's very important. So let's not get lost in the weeds of a lot of gimmicks that are coming out. Take up daily cognitive building activities such as part-time work. I have a lot of patients say, I'm stuck. I have to use my insurance. I can't do anything else because I have no money. Which you need to know. We can go out and we can do things, even if it's just one day a week. I'd like to say, if you don't need to work, you're taken care of, then go out and serve. But we need to be busy. That busyness and service and work, or whatever it is we're doing, taking care of ourselves to be independent, is what builds back the body's connections to the brain. You need to know that the body and the brain work on a system of necessity. You have to really, really, really need it for what you're doing. That's why I say go back and play music. Now, I'm going to play you some songs here in a little bit, and these songs are tough. In fact, if I wrote them out, there would be a lot of 32nd notes and 64th notes in there. Fast. There's, what? Where'd he go? The Roadrunner. But if I had to learn it from scratch, if I was a beginner right now, boy, I tell you what, I have to work for years to be able to learn how to do one of those scales that I'm going to be doing for you. And I'm not doing that to show off. I'm here to tell you you can retain your cognition. So that if you took me when I played as a professional making records, and I had big audiences to play for, and I was going, especially when I started going to conventions, and I had a lot of television programs and so forth that I played on, and you hear me play today, I think you might say, hey, you haven't lost it. You can still do it. And it's because you can remake those circuits. You can remake it. Do not lose confidence in yourself. I had to tell my brothers and sisters for my mother's sake, which when she turned about 89, 90, they put in all these medications, and they kept saying, oh, Mom doesn't remember anybody. I sat down with her at Thanksgiving dinner. She said, who are you? I said, I'm your oldest son, Max. I was not disturbed by the fact that she didn't know who I was. I was mad at the doctor giving her blood pressure medication when she's always had blood pressure 100 over 60 her entire life. And she's freezing to death and didn't know who her oldest son was out of 10 kids. So don't fall for that. Do not treat the person who's going through that like it's every day. Just reintroduce yourself and go on, enjoy them. After I got through, my mother forgot all about the fact she didn't know me. And we had a good time together. That's what you do. So take up daily cognitive building activities, part-time work, music, art, sports, dance, reading, serving, social interaction. I want to tell you, for the people here that stay at Val Vista, Venice and I, when we rolled into town 15 years ago, this is where we stayed. And I really enjoy this place. You guys have had us come and put on concerts. We've had our band. How many have attended the Casa Grande? Did you like that? Mm-hmm. Isn't that a shock? Because you were looking at kids who were all different levels of developmental, and unbelievable. He was one of them. Fantastic. He played the bass in the band. Wonderful. He told me he's a drummer. So when I was looking around for someone to accompany me for this, and I remember, because we never played the percussion together, have we? Because you always had the bass. I said, this is the man. He's one that's going, I play the drums. I said, I've already got 3 drummers. But I did bass terribly. He was the most valuable guy in the band. And I tell you what, these kids that played with us, we had 5 of us that were pros. You put those together, people would say, whoa, when they start playing. They were shocked. Weren't you shocked when you hear them play? Beautiful, beautiful. So go out and do things you've always wanted to do. Writing your life story, painting, building, mentoring, traveling, philanthropy. I want to tell you that when I'm in the presence of my fellow senior citizens, I'm in the presence of great people who rival the people on Mount Rushmore, who rival the pioneers that braved the wilds and came and established this country. I'm among people who have created and who've invented, sometimes reinvented until it's perfected to an art form. I'm talking about people with enormous talent. And so I'm honored to be here with you. The Sircle Wellness Centers offer so much. I'm going to tell you a couple of biomarkers here. look at your tongue when you go home and put a flashlight or a pen light on your tongue and see if you see that. If you see that, that means you've got carbon dioxide in the head and an infection. It ought to be the first thing your doctor looks at when you go in. And they say, and you say, I've got this problem, I've got a cough, I've got this and that, my ears feel plugged up. They should be looking at the bottom of your tongue. But that's not being taught in medical school, so they don't look. When's the last time they had you take off your shoes and socks and look over there? Let me see if I've got, I don't have that slide up. Okay, I don't have that slide up, but there's a slide that shows a bright red foot and a flesh-colored foot. Total contrast. Anytime you're treated for anything remotely called neuropathy, anytime you have varicose veins, which is really, it means that you have a parasite, probably a mycoplasma. It could be from the sarcoidosis class. It's microscopic, and it makes the blood vessels swell up, and it blocks the blood going through, and you create superficial blood vessels to take its place. I tell you what, I am shocked when I see someone who's just had a heart transplant, or they've just had a pacemaker put in, or they've had some major surgery, an ablation of all things, which I call the frontal lobotomy of the heart, which should never, ever, 1,000 years ever be done, but it's done all the time. When I see that, I say, let's roll your pants legs up, take off your shoes and socks, and what do I find? I find factor V. I find blood vessels stretched out to the gills, blood vessels stopped, and I push in there, and I take some Maricel, and I rub that on there, and everybody jump out of their height with pain. Just horrible pain. I said, you're making blood clots. You're getting ready to have a stroke, an embolism, or a heart attack. I find it every time. It's happened today. Almost every day I have at least one person I find that when I'm looking at patients. And I say, did your doctors that did all that surgery on you and give you all those medications and ran $500,000 worth of radiological studies that killed bone marrow and all the terrible stuff that's been done to you, did they notice that? Did they see it? They never had me roll my pants legs up and look at it. Now, sometimes I say, that's good. I'll tell you why. Because every once in a while I get someone that says, yeah, I rolled my pants legs up and I had them look at it. You know what they did? They stripped my blood vessels. There's no reason to do that. We can kill those infections. No, we can't kill them with drugs. No, because to kill the infection, the septic, will kill you if you kill it with pharmacology. But with essential oils, nothing that man makes is as good or strong as essential oils. I've got my pocket right here. Some of you have known me for quite a while. You say during the height of COVID, I wouldn't wear a mask to save my life. It knocked my oxygen down by 8% for one thing. It caused me to rebreathe all the waste that comes out of my lungs. Whenever you breathe out, you're breathing out waste, carbon dioxide, bacteria, unbelievable. You're growing a garden within 20 minutes in that mask. But I have something else here. It's called aseptic. And I put it in my tongue in two places, and I do this. My golly, it was on the Ebola committee. You talk about being exposed. When we talk about hepatitis C, those conditions, you put this on the tongue. Switch it around. There's no bacteria, no virus, nothing that they can create in a lab anywhere in the world that can survive this. Nothing. Now, in FDA, which I'm an FDA expert witness, and I was an advisor once to the commissioner back in the 90s, would say, that's a claim. I say it's all right to make a claim if you can prove it. But I'd like you to show me one single bacteria, one single cell animal, amoeba, you name it, virus that can survive this. It doesn't exist. So no one will take me up on the challenge. So I say, there's nothing it can't kill. And that's true of most of essential oils. You need a diffuser. Okay, put a diffuser. Who else has a diffuser at home? Okay, put that diffuser up and say to your spouse, even if you don't think you need it, say, how was your day? Oh, my day was tough. I am so tired, I'm beat. Put the essential oils in there. When you do that, guess what happens? You sleep like a log, your body heals. Your right brain doesn't kick the left brain to all the pieces because of the way it was treated during the day. So that is very important. That's the reason I wrote that book. And it's been scoured, it's been looked at theoretically by 3 million researchers. It's been out there for them. So far it's had, analyzing various data in there, it's been looked at by hundreds of thousands of researchers worldwide. And not one has objected. And we thought for sure the big pharma guys would object, but they have no argument because they know it's true, because we have so many study references. So anytime I tell you about something like that, let me tell you, there's science behind that. It's not just some wild idea. But you need to be using your diffuser to protect yourself. You need an oximeter. Your oximeter needs to be calibrated. There's only one model that I found on the market that you can buy that actually is calibrated at the factory. The difference between getting it that way will cost you maybe less than $50 versus getting it from a medical supply, which will cost you about $400. And the difference between the two is one has a fiduciary responsibility of the state for weights and measures to come out and see if it's calibrated periodically. They hardly ever check them, but when they do, it's life or death for the person that has that if they're a medical professional. So I'm telling you, everybody should have one, even if they buy one that's it is not from a medical supply. Just make sure it's calibrated. We can help you with that. But these are biomarkers. We use videotoscopy. Videotoscopy, some of you have had septic keratosis doctorants. When we were doing studies on that, we found that 37% of the people who had full-blown diabetes had septic keratosis doctorants. It looks like earwax to the untrained doctor and nurse that takes it out. They think it's earwax, but we find it's got Pseudomonas, it's got aspergillus fungus, it's got candida yeast, and Staphylococcus aureus is very common in it. And we can identify, we've identified millions of cases over the years in various studies. And so we know that that is very much more prominent. Since about half of the American adults are pre-diabetic or diabetic, almost anybody in that category that has an obstruction in their ear has a septic keratosis doctorans. Even though the professional who goes and takes it out may not know it and call it earwax. But we look in videotoscopy, let them show you on the screen what it is, and let them take it apart and point out which bacteria they're talking about. Because when that happens, your inflammation score goes to the roof. I can't tell you how many people have been brought to me for a second opinion on Alzheimer's, and I find it in almost every single case brought to me that both years have as much as 5, 10, or 15 years build up of keratosis doctorans, a series of infections that are headed to the brain stem and are lethal in this end stage. But who's paying attention? Who's looking in your ears? And how many times do I find those and I say, who's looking in your ears? How many doctors have you seen in the last 10 years? Oh, lots and lots. Who's looking in your ears? Oh, a couple. What do they say? Oh, you have to get the wax out. I say, I don't see any wax. I see a facade of wax. But inside is the infection that caused your brain to swell up and cause the dementia. That is an important little factoid I just gave you that could save you from the fate of being conclusively diagnosed as a non-person because you no longer have your mental capabilities about you. I'm going to play 3 more numbers for you. Each one of them represents something. The first one is going to be Feelings, which was a very popular song. I think everybody knows that song. You'll recognize it right off the bat. But to me, it's going to be one note all the way through. It's going to be doodling all over one note. But for you, hopefully it'll sound like what you remember. But the important thing is to remember that some of the things I'm going to do are virtually impossible to do under normal musical training. In other words, give that to composer and say, write that. In other words, one measure would probably take an entire page to cover some of the things I'm going to do. But I'm doing this partly to demonstrate the cognitive benefits of music for a deaf guy who was able to bypass the 85 IQ and a lifetime of frustration and broken relationships and wouldn't know his kids and his kids wouldn't know him. It is still a burden for me, though, to be deaf. And I'm so grateful for the technology that I have because I can speak. Otherwise, you'll never find anybody as deaf as I am speaking because they wouldn't know how to utter the words. And they would forget if I lost my implant and I could not have anything at all, I would forget how to speak, and you guys would be shocked if you heard me 1 month from now. You probably wouldn't understand me. And that's how fast speech can deteriorate when you have no hearing. So just know that between my music, which helped me learn to phrase my communication with you, playing with other people, every other here would tell you how difficult it was for me. Actually, he's playing with me, and as we go along and play together, he's having to listen to me. If he doesn't, we're going to be in two different worlds. And he has to fight like crazy to stay with me in time, because I move over just about 1,000th of a second, right? I move over just a little bit, but he's a good man. I tell you what, I appreciate it. I love this guy. He's a good guy. But what happens is we think as one when we do that, don't we? We played a little concert last night, and we said, "Where's the crowd?" We played our hearts out getting ready for you guys, so we're on the same page. And I hope we can do that again. Do it with you right now. So we're gonna play Feelings. We'll play. You guys can become part of the band. I'm going to conclude with "He Loves Me" on the clarinet. So we'll take it from there. It's hard to speak in playing.
I'm gonna go grab one, like from over there. We can get like everybody, or I could do it. Sure. I just didn't want to pick that phone.
The instructor guy just took off my tongue. Like I say, people say, "How much? How do I know if I'm using enough?" I say, if it takes off, you use enough. Okay, here we go. Stop. Okay, this next one, I want you guys to be part of the band. And you're going to go on the second beat and the fourth beat. Like that. If you can't snap your fingers Clap your hands. But stay with me because I won't hear it. That's the thing. Here we go. Boom, 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 boom.
It's been a while since I played. I'm not sure.
Did you play tenor or alto?
I played alto and baritone.
Okay. Even on alto, the B flat, the lowest note, is the hardest one to make sound nice, isn't it? Otherwise, it's just a duck honking or what? I guess it's a good. Yeah, that's what it is. It's just a duck going by. Hong Kong is going. But I hope that sounds good on the low note. That's a tough one to play. I taught many music students over the years, and that was the hardest thing. They kept looking at me, how do you do that? My horn doesn't do that. I said, give me your horn, and I would do it, their horn. So that's the hardest note. And I tell you that because it took a lot of practice. I remember when I first started playing the clarinet, they told me I had to play the master of the clarinet before I could play saxophone. And so I took the word master very, very seriously. By the time I was 12 years old, I was first chair of City Band in Denver. And that's a story unto itself because they were calling my name and I didn't hear it. They go up to set up in the front with the first clarinet. And but anyway, I had to master. So between age 10 and 12, I mastered enough that I could play Benny Goodman, pretty about as good as Benny Goodman could play. And he was the master. So when I took the saxophone, I had to play in the closet. Because I had to practice because nobody in the house would let me play it. You go out in the shed and play, but it's too cold out there. It was in Denver, Colorado, in the middle of winter. and so when I tried out on the saxophone, I played Dave Brubeck, Take 5. If any of you know what Dave Brubeck's Take 5 is, it's in 5/4 and it's in 5 sharps. It's a killer. It breaks your fingers when you try to play it. Anyway, I'm going to play now a song very important to me. People say, how do you do it? I haven't got an answer. I'm about to give you the answer. And I pay tribute to the person that gave me the possibility to do this. And I'm going to tell you, he loves every one of you too, and he'd be with you to do exactly the same for whatever challenge you have tonight for your loved one, or your grandchild, or your great-grandchild is going through some barrier they need to climb over. So I hope that you know that when I play this, I don't do it to show off at all. In fact, I'm thinking in my first few bars of playing this especially, I'm hoping he's listening and that it's acceptable and that it reaches him and he knows how grateful I am. I would not be here without him. When you read my book and see my life story, you'll see why. My mother had to drive herself to the hospital to have me in a rainstorm. Dirt roads all washed out. But she made it somehow. Am I grateful forever?
We are too.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having me here. I'm touched by you being here, and I want you to know I think you are great people. I'd like to tell people that inside you is an image of who created you. Not just his image, but the inside part too. Lots of capability. As we get older, we get better. Even if the world may not see it. The grandchild we hug for the first time, they feel it. They feel it. No matter what battle they're going through, a new generation has come into being touched by someone that's been here a long, long time. This is nothing more important than each other, nothing more important than family, nothing more important than everything we're doing here to help each other as friends. Thank you so much for being part of this. I appreciate you being here. If you find any of you interested in anything we've talked about here, I do some cognitive checks on you, but mainly I look for physical problems underneath that. Once we take care of the physical problems, most of the mental problems take care of themselves. So if anybody wants me to see that, please pass that on to Gladys. Thank you.
If everybody could just take